Jai Hind, dear students, I am Supratim Saha representing Swami Vivekanand Subharti University Meerut, and today I am going to take on the topic of price regulation and its implications. It consists of the introduction part, which is the objective of regulation, standards for judging reasonables, regulation, institution and methods, applying the efficiency standard, rate of return, followed by the summary. If we look at the introduction of this topic, one of the most important tasks of regulation is to ensure that the prices that are charged from the consumers are reasonable. This has led to a search for standards by which the reasonableness of prices can be judged. A particular focus of regulation has been on establishing maximum prices for monopoly services. Regulations have attempted to judge the reasonableness of prices in telecom and other public utility industries, and it is done by evaluating reasonables from 4 different perspectives, which are as follows, such as specific individual prices like line charge for a residential telephone, relationship between specific prices, example, a residential line compared to a business line, the revenue level of a specific class of service involving several specific services, prices and rate structures, and finally, overall revenue level of the company for all its regulated services. The standards for judging reasonables, it depends mainly on 3 factors. 1 is the equity, number 2 is the efficiency, and number 3 is for improving performance. If you talk about equity, if basic telecom services are judged to be a public necessity, then any standard of reasonableness must have an equity consideration such as need and ability to pay for specific services. If we talk about the efficiency, then for the majority of the PTO services, the standards of reasonable prices is the cost of supplying them. Cost is often seen as a solution to most regulations. However, this is not entirely true. This is where an efficiency parameter should be used. There are other factors, for an example, improving performance, where many countries have tried to reform push-to-talk services which were inefficient and lagging significantly in their response to improved technologies and expanding demand. Therefore, the main motto is to get these public telecom operators, which are also known as PTOs, to improve their performance in a sustained manner over an extended period. Now coming to regulations, that is institution and the methods. The method of price regulation has been applied even before regulatory commissions were created. Regulation was applied by employing social contracts and price caps. A specific structure of maximum rates were followed at that time, but it was the downfall of that system that led to the establishment of regulatory commissions, where experts presumably could examine the complex pricing issues on a continuous basis, developing a criteria by which reasonableness of rates could be judged and deal with necessary day-to-day price changes under changing industry and the market conditions. If we consider reasonableness, after examining the overall level of profit for reasonableness as a second step, attention could be paid to those particular details of specific rate structures which might need attention, such as the reasonableness of prices for basic residential telephone service, which would represent only a small fraction of the total number of individual prices. Apart from that, there are 2 concerns as well, that is ascertaining the criteria for judgment with respect to reasonable and obtaining relevant information which would allow the criteria to be applied on a continuing basis in a consistent and uniform manner. As it is a clear process, the reasonableness of prices is judged in reference to their costs. One approach would be to seek very specific detailed cost information to associate with each individual price. Now, applying the efficiency standards, that is the rate of return, this can also be divided into two parts, that is incentives of cost plus regulation and anti-competitive cross-subsidy incentive. If you look at the energy efficient standards, it can either be mandatory or voluntary in nature. For an example, for electric motors, the mandatory energy efficiency standards must be compatible in the USA, the EU and China. Standards are mandatory programs, that is regulations, stipulating the minimum efficiency levels or maximum energy use levels acceptable for products sold in a particular country or region. They are often called minimum efficiency standards or minimum energy performance standards, also known as MEPS. Though regulatory standards are most often applied to all products on a given market, the product coverage could conceivably be a given percentage of products on the market, a market-wide average or a manufacturer's based average. The energy efficiency standards have been adopted because there is no energy efficiency standard for housing refurbishment, and these are the most reliable standards at present. Furthermore, it has been introduced specifically for zero carbon in existing housing to achieve the required 80% CO2 reduction. Finally, we can see at the summary that the mandatory energy efficiency standards have come into the effect while the ERP measures for pump is studied and does not exist in the related standards in the USA. For fans, the AMCA has established an energy efficient standard, which is AMCA, and the ERP Measure Commission regulation, which is the EU, was passed in EU committee on March 2011. In China also, there has been many mandatory energy efficient standards that has come into effect for pumps. I hope this lecture was informative to you, and thank you for listening. Jai Hind.